I'm genuinely glad you found your way here tonight, because we're about to embark on a journey that will fundamentally change how you think about our place in the universe. We're going to explore worlds so terrifying, so utterly hostile to life as we know it, that they make the harshest places on Earth seem like tropical paradises. What we're about to discover together are planets that shouldn't exist according to everything we thought we knew about planetary formation. Worlds where it rains molten glass sideways at speeds that would shred a skyscraper. Places where the very ground beneath your feet would be diamond, compressed under pressures that could crush our entire planet. Imagine planets where a single day lasts longer than a human lifetime, where the temperature swings are so extreme they could boil lead and freeze nitrogen solid within the same orbit. If you find comfort in these gentle explorations of the cosmos, I'd be deeply grateful if you'd consider subscribing and giving this video a like. It genuinely helps the algorithm connect with more curious souls like yourself, who share this profound fascination with the universe. Your support helps me continue creating these detailed journeys through space and time. And honestly, it means the world to me. Tonight's visuals are here to guide you through these alien landscapes, but there's absolutely no pressure to keep your eyes open. Feel free to close them, let your breathing slow, and allow your imagination to drift across these impossible worlds at the speed of thought itself. I'd also love to know where you're listening from right now. Drop your time and location in the comments below. Let's begin. Before we venture into the depths of cosmic horror, let me paint you a picture of what we're truly dealing with here. When we talk about horrifying planets, we're not discussing the stuff of science fiction nightmares. These are real worlds, discovered by actual telescopes, confirmed by multiple observations, studied by teams of dedicated scientists who sometimes can't quite believe what they're seeing in their data. The universe, it turns out, has an imagination far more twisted and creative than any horror writer who ever lived. It's crafted worlds that challenge every assumption we've made about what a planet can be, where life could exist, and what constitutes a hospitable environment. These aren't just planets that are a little too hot or a little too cold. These are worlds that redefine the very concept of extreme. Imagine standing on the surface of a planet where the atmosphere itself is made of vaporized rock, where clouds of molten silicate drift through skies heated to temperatures that would melt copper. Picture a world where the day side is perpetually locked facing its star, creating a hemisphere of eternal fire, while the night side remains frozen in absolute darkness, with winds howling between these temperature extremes at speeds that would make our most violent hurricanes seem like gentle breezes. The first category of cosmic nightmares we need to understand are what astronomers call hot Jupiters. But don't let the familiar name fool you. These aren't just larger versions of Jupiter sitting a bit closer to their stars. These are gas giants that have wandered so close to their parent suns that they exist in a state of perpetual atmospheric catastrophe. Take HD 189733b, a planet that appears almost Earth-like blue when viewed through our most powerful telescopes. For a brief moment, you might think you're looking at a distant cousin of our own world. But that beautiful blue color isn't from peaceful oceans reflecting sunlight. It's from particles of glass suspended in an atmosphere so violent that it rains molten silicate sideways at over 4,000 miles per hour. Let that sink in for a moment. Imagine stepping out onto the surface of this world, if such a surface could even exist. The very air around you would be filled with microscopic shards of glass, driven by winds so powerful they could strip the flesh from your bones in seconds. The rain falling from those deceptively beautiful blue clouds wouldn't be water, but molten rock heated to over 2000 degrees Fahrenheit. This is a world where the very concept of weather becomes something from our darkest nightmares. But HD 189733b is just the beginning. It represents a class of planets that have taught us that the universe doesn't play by the rules we thought we understood. When we first discovered planets orbiting other stars, we expected to find worlds arranged much like our own solar system. Rocky planets close to the star, gas giants farther out, everything following a logical, predictable pattern. Instead, we found chaos. We discovered massive planets orbiting so close to their stars that their years last just a few Earth days. Worlds so hot that their atmospheres are literally boiling away into space, leaving trails of vaporized planet streaming behind them like cosmic comets. These discoveries forced astronomers to completely rethink everything they thought they knew about how solar systems form and evolve. Consider WASP-12b, a planet so close to its star that it's being slowly consumed by the very sun it orbits. The gravitational forces are so intense that they're stretching this gas giant into an egg shape, pulling its atmosphere away in long streamers of superheated gas. This isn't just a hostile world, it's a dying world, being devoured by its own star over the course of millions of years. Imagine the cosmic horror of existing on a planet that's literally being eaten alive by the sky itself. The temperatures on these hot Jupiters are so extreme that they create weather patterns unlike anything we see in our own solar system. On some of these worlds, it rains iron. Not metaphorically, not as some poetic description of harsh conditions, but literally iron condensing out of the atmosphere and falling like metallic precipitation. The day sides of these planets are so hot that even iron exists as a gas, rising up into the atmosphere only to condense and fall back down as the planet rotates and the metal vapor cools. Other worlds experience ruby and sapphire snow. Yes, you heard that correctly. On planets like HAT P7b, the extreme temperatures and pressures in the atmosphere create conditions where aluminum oxide, the same compound that forms rubies and sapphires on Earth, condenses out of the gas and falls like precious gemstone snow. It's beautiful and terrifying in equal measure, a reminder that the universe can create wonders that are simultaneously magnificent and utterly lethal. But perhaps most disturbing of all are the tidally locked planets. These are worlds where one side permanently faces their star, while the other remains in eternal darkness. Imagine the psychological horror of existing on such a world. On the day side, temperatures soar to over 3000 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to vaporize most metals. The ground itself glows red hot, and the air shimmers with heat that would kill any known form of life instantly. Meanwhile, just a few hundred miles away, the night side exists in perpetual winter. Temperatures drop to hundreds of degrees below zero. Any atmosphere that isn't permanently frozen to the surface is constantly flowing from the hot side to the cold side, creating windstorms that never end, never pause, never give these worlds a moment of peace. Between these two extremes lies the Terminator, the boundary between day and night. It's here that we find some of the most violent weather in the known universe. The temperature differential creates atmospheric dynamics so extreme that they defy easy description. Imagine standing at the edge of this boundary, watching supersonic winds howl past, carrying clouds of vaporized rock from the day side to the night side, where they freeze instantly and fall like toxic snow. These aren't just numbers on a scientific chart. These are real worlds, orbiting real stars, existing right now as we speak. While you're sitting comfortably wherever you are, listening to these words, there are planets where diamond rain is falling from skies of molten rock. There are worlds where the very air would kill you, not through lack of oxygen, but through the presence of vaporized metals and temperatures that would flash boil your blood in seconds. The scale of these cosmic nightmares becomes even more apparent when we consider their size. Many of these hot Jupiters are larger than our own Jupiter, which itself could contain over 1,000 Earths. Imagine a planet so massive that our entire world would be nothing more than a small island in its vast ocean of superheated gas. And then imagine that entire massive world existing in conditions so extreme that its atmosphere is literally boiling away into space. But size alone doesn't capture the true horror of these worlds. It's the combination of scale and conditions that creates something truly nightmarish. Picture a planet with a mass several times that of Jupiter, orbiting so close to its star that its surface temperature exceeds that of some smaller stars. The gravitational forces alone would crush any solid object to a fraction of its normal size, while the heat would vaporize anything that somehow managed to survive the pressure. These discoveries have also revealed something deeply unsettling about planetary formation. We used to think that planets formed where they currently orbit, that gas giants naturally formed in the cooler outer regions of solar systems, where ice and gas could condense. But hot Jupiters prove that massive planets can migrate inward, spiraling closer and closer to their stars over millions of years. This migration process is itself a form of cosmic horror. Imagine being on a world that was once temperate, where conditions might have even been suitable for life, only to watch your planet slowly spiral into the fires of its own sun. The process would take eons, but it would be inevitable, unstoppable, a slow-motion apocalypse played out over geological time. What makes this even more disturbing is the realization that this could have happened in our own solar system. The gas giants we see today, Jupiter and Saturn, might once have been much closer to the Sun. If the migration had continued, Earth itself might have been consumed, swallowed up by a wandering gas giant, or flung out into the cold depths of space. As we continue our journey through these cosmic nightmares, remember that every world we're discovering is teaching us something new about the universe and our place within it. These horrifying planets aren't just curiosities or cosmic accidents. They're windows into the true nature of planetary systems, showing us just how rare and precious our own gentle world really is. The universe, it seems, has a preference for extremes. For every Earth-like world that might exist, there are countless others that exist in states of perpetual catastrophe. Worlds where the very concepts of weather, seasons, and day and night become twisted into something unrecognizable, something that would drive any Earth-born mind to madness simply by trying to comprehend it. But we're just getting started on this journey through cosmic horror. The hot Jupiters, terrifying as they are, represent only one category of nightmarish worlds that populate our galaxy. There are planets made entirely of diamond, worlds where it rains sulfuric acid, and places where the gravity is so intense that time itself moves differently than it does here on Earth. The second category of cosmic nightmares takes us even further from anything resembling the familiar. These are the diamond worlds, planets so compressed and heated that their very substance has been transformed into crystalline structures that would make our most precious gems seem common as sand. Consider 55 Cancri E, a super-Earth orbiting so close to its star that its surface temperature reaches over 4,000 degrees Fahrenheit. But temperature alone doesn't tell the full story of this world's horror. The immense pressure at the planet's core has compressed carbon into diamond on a scale that defies imagination. We're not talking about scattered diamond deposits like we find on Earth. The entire interior of this world may be a solid diamond sphere, larger than our moon, wrapped in a thin shell of molten rock. Imagine trying to comprehend the value of such a world by Earth standards. The diamond industry would collapse overnight if we could somehow transport even a fraction of this planet's mass back to Earth. But that's missing the true horror of the situation. This isn't a treasure world waiting to be mined. This is a hellscape where the very ground beneath your feet would be diamond, superheated to temperatures that would incinerate you instantly, under pressures that would compress your body to the size of a marble. The atmospheric conditions on these diamond worlds create their own unique form of nightmare. The extreme heat doesn't just affect the solid surface, it creates an atmosphere of vaporized rock and metal that exists in a constant state of chemical chaos. Elements that should never exist together in gaseous form swirl through skies that glow with their own internal heat. The very air, if you could call it that, would be toxic beyond anything we can imagine, filled with compounds that would dissolve your lungs before you could even attempt to breathe. But perhaps most disturbing is what happens when these diamond worlds cool slightly as they orbit their stars. The temperature fluctuations cause the diamond surface to expand and contract, creating geological activity unlike anything we see on Earth. Imagine diamond earthquakes, where crystalline formations the size of mountain ranges crack and shift, with sounds that would shatter eardrums if anyone could survive long enough to hear them. The pressure dynamics on these worlds create another layer of cosmic horror. The gravitational forces are so intense that they compress the diamond itself beyond its normal density. We think of diamond as the hardest natural substance on Earth, but on these worlds, even diamond is crushed into forms of matter that we can barely comprehend. The very atoms are forced closer together than should be physically possible, creating materials that exist nowhere else in the universe. Moving deeper into our catalogue of cosmic nightmares, we encounter the acid rain planets. These worlds make the most polluted environments on Earth seem like pristine wilderness. Take HD 2009-458b, a planet where the atmosphere is so chemically aggressive that it literally strips atoms from any material it contacts. But this isn't just corrosive in the way we understand acid on Earth. This is molecular destruction on a planetary scale. The rain that falls on these worlds isn't water mixed with acid. It's pure sulfuric acid heated to hundreds of degrees, falling through an atmosphere so dense and toxic that it would dissolve a human body in seconds. The very concept of shelter becomes meaningless when the atmosphere itself is designed to destroy any complex molecular structure it encounters. Even our most acid-resistant materials would last mere moments in these conditions. The chemical processes happening in these atmospheres create compounds that don't exist naturally anywhere else we know of. The extreme temperatures and pressures force chemical reactions that produce substances so exotic that we don't even have names for them yet. These worlds are essentially planet-sized chemistry experiments running completely out of control, producing toxic compounds at rates that would poison entire solar systems if they could somehow be transported elsewhere. What makes these acid worlds even more terrifying is their stability. These aren't temporary conditions caused by some cosmic disaster. These planets have existed in these states for millions or billions of years. The chemical processes that create their hellish atmospheres are self-sustaining, powered by the endless energy of their parent stars. They represent a kind of planetary equilibrium, but one that exists in a state of perpetual chemical warfare against anything complex enough to be called matter. The third major category of cosmic horror introduces us to worlds where gravity itself becomes the enemy. These are planets with gravitational fields so intense that they warp the very fabric of space and time around them. On Earth, we're accustomed to gravity as a gentle constant, something that keeps us grounded but doesn't dominate every aspect of our existence. On these worlds, gravity becomes a crushing force that shapes every aspect of reality. Consider the ultra-dense planets orbiting close to neutron stars. These aren't planets in any sense we would recognize. They're collections of matter so compressed that a teaspoon of their material would weigh as much as a mountain on Earth. Standing on the surface of such a world, if standing were even possible, you would experience gravitational forces hundreds of times stronger than what we feel on Earth. The implications of such extreme gravity extend far beyond simple, crushing forces. Time itself moves differently in these intense gravitational fields. Due to Einstein's theory of relativity, time literally runs slower in stronger gravitational fields. On these ultra-dense worlds, a single day might last weeks or months as we measure time here on Earth. Imagine the psychological horror of existing in a place where time itself has been stretched and distorted beyond recognition. The gravitational tidal forces on these worlds create their own form of cosmic nightmare. Just as our moon creates small tides in Earth's oceans, the extreme gravity of these planets creates tidal forces in solid rock, in the atmosphere, even in the fabric of space itself. The surface of these worlds is constantly flexing and stretching under gravitational stresses that would tear apart any normal planet. Mountain ranges rise and fall like slow-motion waves, and the very ground beneath your feet moves in ways that would drive any earthborn mind to madness. But perhaps most terrifying of all are the gravitational time dilation effects. If you could somehow survive on one of these worlds, you would watch the rest of the universe age at an accelerated rate. Stars would be born, live their entire lives, and die in what would seem like moments to you. Civilizations could rise and fall while you experienced what felt like a single day. You would become unstuck in time, trapped in a gravitational well, where the normal flow of causality breaks down. The atmospheric dynamics on high-gravity worlds create weather patterns that exist nowhere else in the universe. The intense gravitational fields compress atmospheres to densities that approach liquid, creating air so thick it would be like trying to breathe water. The pressure differentials cause winds that move not in the gentle currents we know on Earth, but in massive atmospheric rivers that flow like liquid through skies dense enough to swim through. These extreme gravitational environments also affect light itself. The intense gravitational fields bend and distort electromagnetic radiation, creating optical effects that would make navigation impossible and observation meaningless. Light from stars would be stretched and compressed as it passes through these gravitational wells, creating a sky filled with distorted images and phantom stars that exist only as gravitational mirages. The magnetic fields generated by these ultra-dense worlds are equally extreme. The combination of rapid rotation and intense gravitational compression creates magnetic fields millions of times stronger than Earth's. These fields are so powerful they would strip the electrons from atoms, turning any matter in their vicinity into plasma. The very space around these planets becomes electrically charged, crackling with energy discharges that make our most powerful lightning storms look like static electricity. As we venture deeper into this catalogue of cosmic nightmares, we begin to understand that the universe operates by rules far more extreme than anything we encounter in our daily lives. These aren't just planets that happen to be a little more hostile than Earth. These are worlds that exist in states of reality so foreign to our experience that they challenge our very understanding of what it means for a planet to exist at all. The temperature extremes we've discussed aren't just numbers on a scientific chart. They represent conditions where the basic physics of matter breaks down, where elements exist in states that shouldn't be possible, where the very concepts of solid, liquid, and gas become meaningless. On the hottest of these worlds, matter exists in forms that we can only create for microseconds in our most powerful particle accelerators. The pressure conditions create their own form of cosmic horror. Imagine pressures so intense that they compress matter beyond anything we thought possible, where atoms are forced so close together that they begin to merge, where the normal rules of chemistry and physics simply cease to apply. These aren't just high-pressure environments like the bottom of our deepest oceans. These are pressures that exist at the cores of stars, pressures that turn matter itself into something alien and incomprehensible. The fourth category of cosmic nightmares brings us face to face with worlds that exist in states of perpetual volcanic catastrophe. But when we speak of volcanic activity on these hellish planets, we're not talking about the relatively gentle eruptions we see on Earth, even our most violent ones. We're describing worlds where the entire surface exists in a constant state of molten chaos, where volcanoes don't erupt occasionally but continuously, where the very concept of solid ground becomes meaningless. Take Io, Jupiter's moon, and multiply its volcanic activity by 1,000. That begins to approach what we see on planets like Coro-T 7b, a world so close to its star that the day side is permanently molten, while the night side experiences rock rain. Yes, you heard that correctly. The extreme temperature differential causes rock to vaporize on the day side, rise into the atmosphere, then condense and fall as precipitation on the cooler night side. Imagine standing in a rainstorm where instead of water droplets, chunks of solidified lava are falling from the sky. The volcanic activity on these worlds creates atmospheric conditions that defy every natural law we thought we understood. The constant eruptions don't just spew lava and ash into the air. They create atmospheres composed entirely of vaporized rock, where clouds of molten silicate drift through skies that glow with their own internal heat. The very air becomes a toxic soup of superheated minerals that would dissolve your lungs before you could even attempt to breathe. But the true horror of these volcanic worlds lies in their geological instability. The entire planetary crust exists in a state of constant flux, with new volcanic islands rising from molten seas, only to be consumed by other eruptions within hours or days. The surface features we use to navigate and understand terrain simply don't exist in any permanent form. Maps become meaningless when the landscape itself is constantly reshaping, constantly destroying and recreating itself in an endless cycle of molten chaos. The sound alone on these worlds would drive any earthborn creature to madness. Imagine the roar of 10,000 volcanoes erupting simultaneously, the grinding crash of tectonic plates colliding at speeds that would make our fastest earthquakes seem like gentle tremors. The acoustic environment would be so intense that sound waves themselves become physical forces, capable of shattering rock and creating their own form of atmospheric pressure that adds another layer to the already impossible conditions. Moving deeper into our exploration of cosmic horror, we encounter the tidally shredded worlds. These are planets that orbit so close to their stars or other massive objects that the gravitational forces literally tear them apart in slow motion. The process isn't quick or merciful. These worlds are slowly disintegrating over millions of years, their materials streaming away into space like cosmic tears. Picture a planet where the very ground beneath your feet is constantly being pulled away by tidal forces so intense that mountains flow like water toward the point closest to the star. The gravitational gradient is so extreme that your head would experience noticeably different gravitational pull than your feet. If somehow you could survive the other impossible conditions, you would feel your body being stretched, pulled apart by forces that recognize no difference between solid rock and human flesh. The atmospheric dynamics on these tidally disrupted worlds create weather patterns that exist nowhere else in the universe. As the planet's material streams away into space, it creates a comet-like tail that can stretch for millions of miles. But this isn't just gas and dust being blown away by stellar wind. This is the planet's very substance being torn away, atom by atom, creating a trail of planetary debris that marks the slow death of an entire world. What makes these tidally shredded planets even more disturbing is the timescale involved. This isn't a quick catastrophic event like an asteroid impact or stellar explosion. This is a cosmic execution that takes geological ages to complete. If somehow conscious beings existed on such a world, they would witness their planet slowly dissolving around them over millions of generations, knowing that their world's fate was sealed by the inexorable laws of gravity and orbital mechanics. The electromagnetic effects created by these streaming planetary materials add another dimension of horror. As charged particles from the disintegrating planet interact with the star's magnetic field, they create aurora displays that would make Earth's northern lights seem pale by comparison. But these aren't beautiful, natural light shows. They're the visible manifestation of a planet's death throes, painted across the sky in colors that represent the vaporization of entire continents. Perhaps most unsettling of all are the rogue planets, worlds that have been ejected from their solar systems and now drift alone through the cosmic void. These aren't planets that orbit stars. They're orphaned worlds, cast out into interstellar space, existing in conditions of perpetual darkness and cold beyond anything we can imagine. The surface temperature on these rogue worlds drops to just a few degrees above absolute zero, the coldest temperature possible in the universe. Any atmosphere they once possessed has long since frozen and fallen to the surface as snow. The silence on these worlds would be complete and eternal, broken only by the occasional crack of expanding ice or the whisper of cosmic radiation interacting with their frozen surfaces. But the true horror of rogue planets lies not in their current state, but in imagining what they once were. Many of these worlds likely once orbited stars, possibly harboring atmospheres, oceans, even life. The gravitational interactions that ejected them from their home systems would have been catastrophic events that destroyed any chance of continued habitability. Imagine being on a world that suddenly finds itself flung into the darkness, watching your star grow smaller and dimmer until it becomes just another point of light in an alien sky. The psychological impact of existing on such a world would be beyond human comprehension. The complete absence of any external heat source means that the only warmth comes from the planet's own internal heat, gradually radiating away into space over billions of years. Any civilization that somehow survived such an ejection would be forced to burrow deep underground, living off geothermal energy, while the surface of their world became a frozen wasteland, where even the air itself turns to snow. The sixth category of cosmic nightmares introduces us to worlds where radiation levels reach intensities that would sterilize entire solar systems. These are planets orbiting pulsars, neutron stars, and other exotic stellar remnants that emit radiation so intense it becomes a physical force capable of stripping away planetary atmospheres and sterilizing any surface it touches. Imagine a world bathed in X-ray and gamma radiation so intense that the very atoms in your body would be ionized within seconds of exposure. The electromagnetic environment around these planets is so extreme that it creates its own weather patterns, with charged particles streaming through magnetospheres that crackle with energy discharges millions of times more powerful than Earth's most violent lightning storms. The radiation levels on these worlds don't just kill biological life instantly. They break down the molecular bonds that hold matter together, gradually disintegrating any complex chemical structures over time. Even the hardest materials would eventually be reduced to their component atoms by the relentless bombardment of high-energy particles. These planets exist in a state of constant molecular warfare, where the very building blocks of matter are under continuous attack. But perhaps most disturbing is the realization that these radiation-soaked worlds might once have been normal planets orbiting normal stars. The stellar remnants they now orbit are the collapsed remains of stars that once provided gentle warmth and light. The transformation of their parent star into a pulsar or neutron star would have subjected these planets to radiation doses so intense that they would have sterilized their surfaces millions of times over in a matter of hours. The magnetic fields around these radiation worlds create their own form of cosmic horror. The interaction between the intense stellar magnetic field and the planet's own magnetic field, if it still exists, creates a complex electromagnetic environment where charged particles spiral through space at near-light speeds. The aurora displays on these worlds would be visible across interstellar distances, but they would represent not beauty, but the visible signature of a world being slowly destroyed by radiation. As we venture deeper into this catalogue of cosmic nightmares, we begin to encounter planets that challenge our very understanding of what matter can become under extreme conditions. These are worlds where the normal states of solid, liquid, and gas become meaningless, where matter exists in forms that we can barely comprehend, let alone survive. Consider planets with metallic hydrogen atmospheres, where the pressure is so intense that hydrogen, normally the lightest gas, is compressed into a metallic state. The atmospheric dynamics on such worlds create weather patterns, where metallic hydrogen rain falls upward due to electromagnetic effects, where lightning strikes carry enough energy to power entire civilizations, where the very air conducts electricity like a planet-wide circuit board. The optical effects on these worlds would be unlike anything in our experience. Light passing through metallic hydrogen atmospheres becomes polarized and refracted in ways that create skies filled with false images, phantom suns, and gravitational mirages that make navigation impossible. The horizon itself becomes meaningless when light rays curve and bend through atmospheric layers of different densities and electromagnetic properties. But the true horror of these exotic matter worlds lies in their unpredictability. The phase transitions between different states of matter happen suddenly and violently, creating atmospheric explosions that can reshape entire hemispheres within hours. What appears to be a stable atmospheric layer can suddenly undergo a phase change that releases energy equivalent to millions of nuclear explosions, turning peaceful skies into cosmic catastrophes without warning. The sound environment on these worlds defies description. When matter itself exists in states unknown to Earth physics, the way it transmits acoustic energy creates sounds that would be literally impossible to hear on our world. Imagine thunder that resonates at frequencies that penetrate solid rock, or wind that carries acoustic signatures that could shatter crystal formations from hundreds of miles away. The gravitational effects of these exotic matter planets create their own unique form of nightmare. When significant portions of a planet's mass exist in states of matter with different gravitational properties, the planetary gravitational field becomes irregular and unpredictable. Areas of enhanced gravity alternate with regions of reduced gravitational pull, creating a surface where the very concept of up and down becomes relative and changeable. The final category of cosmic horror takes us to worlds that exist at the very edges of what we can call planets at all. These are the brown dwarf companions, objects so massive they're almost stars, but not quite massive enough to sustain fusion. They exist in a twilight state between planet and star, generating their own heat through gravitational compression, while slowly cooling over billions of years. The atmospheric conditions on these near-star worlds create weather patterns that dwarf anything we've discussed so far. Storm systems the size of entire planets rage across their surfaces, driven by convection currents that carry enough energy to power solar systems. The temperature differentials create wind speeds that approach significant fractions of the speed of light, carrying particles at velocities that would turn individual molecules into cosmic ray bullets. But perhaps most unsettling is the realization that these brown dwarf worlds represent failed stars, objects that almost achieved stellar ignition, but fell just short of the mass required to become true suns. They are cosmic might-have-beens, worlds that exist in a state of permanent stellar adolescence, forever on the verge of becoming something greater, but never quite succeeding. The magnetic fields generated by these massive objects are so intense, they create their own form of space weather, distorting the fabric of space-time itself and creating electromagnetic storms that can be detected across interstellar distances. The radio emissions from these worlds sound like the screams of dying giants when translated into audio frequencies, cosmic wails that echo across the galaxy as testament to their failed stellar ambitions. As we near the end of our journey through these cosmic nightmares, we must confront a disturbing truth about our universe. These horrifying worlds aren't rare exceptions or cosmic accidents. They represent the normal state of planetary existence in our galaxy. For every Earth-like world that might exist, there are thousands of these nightmare planets, worlds that exist in states of perpetual catastrophe that would destroy any known form of life in seconds. The universe, it seems, has a preference for extremes. The gentle conditions we enjoy on Earth, the stable climate, the breathable atmosphere, the liquid water, the protective magnetic field. All of these represent an almost impossibly rare combination of factors that allow life as we know it to exist. We are not the rule, but the exception, a tiny island of habitability in an ocean of cosmic horror. These discoveries force us to confront a deeply unsettling realization about our cosmic neighborhood. The exoplanets we've catalogued so far represent only the beginning of our understanding of planetary horror. Each new world we discover seems to push the boundaries of what we thought possible, revealing conditions so extreme they challenge our most basic assumptions about the nature of matter, energy, and existence itself. But there's another category of nightmare worlds that takes cosmic horror to an entirely different level. These are the ocean worlds with toxic seas, planets where liquid exists on the surface, but in forms so chemically aggressive that they make sulfuric acid seem like drinking water. Consider the possibility of worlds orbiting red dwarf stars, tidally locked planets where one hemisphere maintains liquid temperatures, while being bathed in radiation that would sterilize our entire planet. Picture an ocean world where the seas are composed of liquid methane mixed with dissolved heavy metals, creating a chemical soup that would dissolve human tissue faster than we could comprehend. The waves on such worlds wouldn't be the gentle rolling swells we know from Earth's oceans. They would be tsunami-scale walls of toxic liquid, driven by atmospheric pressure systems so violent they create permanent storm fronts that circle the planet at speeds approaching the sound barrier. The atmospheric chemistry above these toxic oceans creates its own form of environmental catastrophe. As the poisonous seas evaporate under the heat of their parent stars, they fill the atmosphere with chemical compounds so reactive they spontaneously ignite when they contact organic matter. The very air becomes a weapon, a gaseous mixture so corrosive it would strip paint from metal and flesh from bone with equal efficiency. What makes these toxic ocean worlds particularly disturbing is their superficial resemblance to Earth. From a distance, through our most powerful telescopes, they might appear blue and inviting, worlds that seem to promise the possibility of life and habitability. Only closer inspection reveals the true nature of their chemical composition, the deadly reality hidden beneath their deceptively familiar appearance. The temperature dynamics on these worlds create weather patterns that exist in a constant state of chemical warfare. The evaporation and condensation cycles don't just move water through the atmosphere as they do on Earth. They transport highly reactive chemicals that undergo continuous transformation as they cycle between liquid and gaseous states. Rain on these worlds doesn't nourish life. It destroys any complex molecular structure it encounters. Moving deeper into our catalogue of cosmic nightmares, we encounter worlds where the very concept of a solid surface becomes meaningless. These are the gas giants with metallic cores, planets where the transition from atmosphere to surface happens gradually over hundreds of miles of increasingly dense gas until pressure finally compresses the atmosphere into liquid, then solid, then exotic states of matter that don't exist anywhere else in the universe. Imagine descending through the atmosphere of such a world, watching as the gas around you becomes thicker and thicker, more and more dense, until you realize you're no longer falling through air, but swimming through liquid gas under pressures that would compress your body to the size of a marble. The transition is so gradual that there's no definable moment when atmosphere becomes ocean, becomes solid ground. You would simply sink deeper and deeper into increasingly dense matter until the pressure crushed you out of existence. The electromagnetic effects in these deep atmospheric layers create their own form of environmental horror. The extreme pressure ionizes the gas, turning the entire atmosphere into a conducting medium that carries electrical currents with the power of lightning storms. But these aren't isolated lightning bolts as we know them on Earth. They're continuous electrical flows that turn the entire atmosphere into a planet-sized electrical circuit, crackling with energy discharges that would vaporize anything made of normal matter. The acoustic environment in these dense atmospheric layers would be unlike anything we could experience on Earth. Sound waves traveling through matter compressed to near-liquid densities carry frequencies and amplitudes that would be physically impossible in our thin atmosphere. The pressure waves from atmospheric movements would be so intense they could shatter solid rock, turning sound itself into a destructive force that reshapes the planet's internal structure. But perhaps most disturbing of all are the implications for anyone who might somehow find themselves trapped in such an environment. The gradual increase in pressure means there would be no sudden realization of danger, no moment of panic when you understood your situation. You would simply sink deeper and deeper into increasingly hostile conditions, your body slowly adapting to higher and higher pressures until the point where adaptation becomes impossible and consciousness simply ends. The seventh category of cosmic horror introduces us to planets where time itself becomes the enemy. These are worlds orbiting so close to massive objects that gravitational time dilation effects become extreme enough to notice on human timescales. We're not talking about the subtle effects that require atomic clocks to measure. These are time distortions so severe they would be immediately apparent to anyone experiencing them. Consider a planet orbiting close to a black hole, where the gravitational field is intense enough to slow time significantly compared to the rest of the universe. Standing on the surface of such a world, you would watch the stars wheel overhead at accelerated rates, entire stellar lifetimes compressed into what feels like days or weeks of subjective time. Civilizations could rise and fall in the wider universe while you experienced what felt like a brief vacation. The psychological horror of such time dilation effects goes beyond simple disorientation. Imagine trying to communicate with the outside universe when your radio signals are time dilated to the point where a simple conversation takes decades to complete from an external perspective. You would become temporally isolated, cut off from the normal flow of causality that connects the rest of the universe. The tidal effects on these time-dilated worlds create their own unique form of environmental catastrophe. The gravitational field isn't uniform across the planet's surface, meaning that different regions experience different rates of time passage. The equatorial regions closest to the massive object would experience slower time than the polar regions, creating a temporal gradient across the planet's surface that would make synchronized activity impossible. What makes these time-dilated worlds even more disturbing is the realization that escape becomes increasingly difficult as the time effects intensify. Any spacecraft attempting to leave the planet would need to overcome not just the gravitational well, but the temporal distortion effects that make coordination with outside rescue efforts nearly impossible. You would be trapped not just by gravity, but by time itself. The atmospheric dynamics on these worlds create weather patterns driven by temporal differential effects. Air masses experiencing different rates of time flow create pressure systems unlike anything we see on Earth, where the very concepts of storm formation and atmospheric circulation break down under the influence of non-uniform time passage. Weather prediction becomes meaningless when the temporal framework of cause and effect operates differently in various parts of the atmosphere. Moving into our 8th category of cosmic nightmares, we encounter the plasma worlds, planets where the surface temperature is so extreme that matter exists only in its 4th state, as ionized plasma. These aren't just hot planets, as we've discussed before. These are worlds where the very atoms that make up the surface have been stripped of their electrons, creating an environment where normal chemistry becomes impossible. The surface of a plasma world would glow with its own light, not reflected from its star, but generated by the thermal motion of ionized particles. The landscape would be constantly shifting as plasma currents flow across the surface like liquid fire, carrying temperatures hot enough to vaporize any known material instantly. The very ground would be alive with electrical activity, crackling with energy discharges that make our most powerful lightning storms seem like static electricity. The atmospheric conditions above these plasma surfaces create their own form of electromagnetic chaos. The boundary between surface and atmosphere becomes meaningless when both exist as ionized plasma, creating a continuously conducting medium that extends from the planetary core to the edge of space. The entire world becomes a single electrical entity, pulsing with energy flows that can be detected across interstellar distances. The magnetic field effects on plasma worlds reach intensities that would disrupt the fundamental forces holding matter together. The combination of extreme temperature and powerful magnetic fields creates conditions where the normal rules of atomic structure break down, where electrons are stripped away and nuclei are compressed beyond their normal densities. Matter itself becomes unstable, existing in states that challenge our understanding of atomic physics. But the true horror of plasma worlds lies in their electromagnetic emissions. These planets broadcast radio waves, X-rays, and gamma radiation across the galaxy, announcing their presence as beacons of cosmic destruction. Any spacecraft approaching such a world would be bombarded with radiation doses lethal at distances of millions of miles, creating a zone of death around the planet that extends far into space. The ninth category brings us face to face with worlds that exist in states of perpetual seismic catastrophe. These are planets where tectonic activity operates at scales and intensities that make our most violent earthquakes seem like gentle tremors. The entire planetary crust exists in a constant state of motion, with continental-sized plates colliding and separating at speeds measurable in feet per hour, rather than inches per year. Imagine a world where the ground beneath your feet is never stable, where mountains rise and fall within human lifetimes, where new ocean basins open and close within decades. The seismic activity on these worlds creates acoustic environments so intense that the constant rumble of tectonic movement drowns out all other sound. The planet itself becomes a percussion instrument of cosmic proportions, beating out rhythms of destruction that never pause, never rest. The volcanic activity associated with such extreme tectonic movement creates atmospheric conditions that defy description. The constant eruptions don't just add ash and gas to the atmosphere, they completely replace it on regular cycles. The air itself is recycled through volcanic processes, creating atmospheric compositions that change dramatically over short time periods. As different regions of the planet contribute their geological emissions to the global atmospheric mix. The gravitational effects of such rapid tectonic movement create their own form of planetary instability. As massive chunks of crust move and collide, they alter the planet's mass distribution enough to affect its gravitational field. The very force that keeps you anchored to the surface fluctuates as geological features reshape themselves, creating regions where gravity becomes unpredictable and dangerous. The 10th and perhaps most disturbing category of cosmic horror introduces us to the infected worlds, planets where the normal processes of planetary evolution have been contaminated by exotic matter or energy sources that transform them into something alien and hostile. These might be worlds that have encountered dark matter concentrations, planets infected by strange matter from neutron star collisions, or worlds where quantum vacuum decay has begun to alter the fundamental constants of physics. Picture a planet where the laws of physics themselves are slowly changing, where the constants that govern atomic structure and chemical bonding are gradually shifting toward values that cannot support complex matter. The transformation would be invisible at first, detectable only through precise measurements of atomic spectra and molecular behavior. But as the process continues, matter itself would begin to break down. Molecules would lose their stability, and the very atoms that make up the planet would begin to decay. The visual effects of such physical constant decay would be unlike anything in our experience. As the electromagnetic force constant shifts, light itself would behave differently, creating optical illusions where distances appear distorted and colors shift toward wavelengths that don't exist in normal space. The sky would fill with impossible hues as photons interact with matter operating under altered physical laws. The biological implications of such worlds, if life had ever existed there, would be beyond horrific. As the fundamental constants shift, the chemical bonds that hold biological molecules together would become unstable. DNA would unravel, proteins would denature, and cellular structures would collapse as the very forces that make life possible slowly fade away. Any conscious beings present would experience their own bodies betraying them at the molecular level. The temporal effects of physical constant decay create their own form of cosmic horror. As the constants change, the rate of time passage itself might be affected, creating regions where causality operates under different rules than the rest of the universe. Past and future could become confused, effect could precede cause, and the linear progression of events that makes reality comprehensible could break down entirely. Perhaps most terrifying is the realization that such infected worlds represent a form of cosmic contagion that could potentially spread. If vacuum decay or strange matter contamination can alter the fundamental structure of reality itself, then these worlds become sources of infection that could gradually transform entire regions of space, spreading their altered physics like a cosmic plague that consumes normal matter and replaces it with something alien and hostile. As we delve deeper into these cosmic nightmares, we encounter worlds that challenge not just our understanding of planetary science, but our comprehension of reality itself. These are planets where the normal categories of matter, energy, space, and time become fluid and interchangeable, where the very concepts we use to understand the universe break down under conditions so extreme they approach the boundaries of what can physically exist. The mathematical models we use to describe these worlds often return results that seem impossible, calculations that suggest planetary conditions so extreme they push against the fundamental limits of what the universe allows. These are worlds that exist at the edge of physical possibility, balanced on the knife's edge between existence and dissolution into pure energy. The electromagnetic signatures of these extreme worlds create their own form of cosmic horror. Their radio emissions, when translated into audio frequencies, sound like the screams of tortured matter, the death cries of atoms being torn apart by forces beyond human comprehension. These signals travel across the galaxy, carrying with them the acoustic signature of cosmic suffering on a planetary scale. The gravitational wave emissions from these worlds, as they spiral toward destruction or undergo catastrophic phase transitions, create ripples in space-time itself that can be detected by our most sensitive instruments. These waves carry information about events so violent they distort the very fabric of reality, cosmic catastrophes that announce themselves across the universe through the medium of curved space-time. But perhaps most disturbing of all is the growing realization that these nightmare worlds aren't rare cosmic accidents. They represent the normal state of planetary existence in our universe. The gentle, stable conditions we enjoy on Earth are the true anomaly, a statistical impossibility that exists only because of an incredibly precise balance of factors that could be disrupted by any number of cosmic events. Every day, our telescopes discover new worlds that push the boundaries of what we thought possible. Each new exoplanet survey reveals conditions more extreme than the last, worlds that exist in states of perpetual catastrophe that make our previous discoveries seem almost hospitable by comparison. We are mapping a universe filled with cosmic horror, a galaxy where nightmare worlds outnumber potentially habitable ones by ratios that suggest life itself is fighting a losing battle against the forces of cosmic destruction. The implications of these discoveries extend far beyond academic astronomy. They force us to confront the fragility of our own existence, the incredible rarity of the conditions that allow life to flourish on Earth. Every breath we take, every moment of stability we experience, represents a victory against cosmic odds so overwhelming they approach the miraculous. As we continue our journey through this catalogue of cosmic nightmares, remember that you are resting safely on one of the universe's rarest treasures, a world where matter exists in stable forms, where chemical bonds hold molecules together, where time flows at a steady rate, and where the very atoms in your body can exist without being torn apart by radiation, pressure, or exotic physical forces. The universe may be filled with worlds of unimaginable horror, but tonight, you are sheltered on an island of peace in an ocean of cosmic chaos. The gentle gravity that holds you to Earth's surface, the atmosphere that provides each breath, the magnetic field that shields you from radiation all represent a convergence of conditions so improbable that their existence borders on the impossible. Yet here we are, conscious beings capable of contemplating these distant nightmares from the safety of our cosmic sanctuary. We can study worlds where diamond rain falls from skies of molten rock, where time itself moves at different rates, where matter exists in states unknown to terrestrial physics, all while resting comfortably in an environment so perfectly calibrated for life that its very existence challenges our understanding of probability and cosmic design. The 14th category of cosmic horror reveals worlds where the boundary between planet and star becomes blurred beyond recognition. These are the brown dwarf desert companions, objects massive enough to generate their own heat through gravitational compression, but not quite massive enough to sustain nuclear fusion. They exist in a liminal state between planetary and stellar existence, generating temperatures that approach stellar levels while lacking the nuclear fires that define true stars. The atmospheric dynamics on these brown dwarf worlds create storm systems so massive they dwarf entire planets. Hurricane-force winds carrying temperatures hot enough to melt lead spiral across surfaces that glow with their own internal heat. These aren't weather patterns in any sense we would recognize from Earth. They're planetary scale convection cells driven by gravitational compression, creating atmospheric rivers of superheated gas that flow like molten metal through skies dense enough to swim through. The magnetic fields generated by these near-stellar objects reach intensities that tear apart the very fabric of space around them. Charged particles spiral through magnetospheres so powerful, they create aurora displays visible from interstellar distances. But these aren't the gentle light shows we see in Earth's polar regions. They're electromagnetic storms that crackle with energy discharges millions of times more powerful than our most violent lightning, turning the space around these worlds into a charged battlefield where matter itself becomes weaponized. What makes these brown dwarf companions particularly disturbing is their evolutionary trajectory. Over billions of years, they slowly cool and contract, their surfaces gradually dimming from white-hot to red-hot to eventually a dull infrared glow. Any observers watching from a distance would witness these worlds dying a slow death, their internal fires gradually fading as they radiate their heat into the cosmic void. They represent stellar failure on a massive scale, objects that came tantalizingly close to becoming suns, but fell just short of the mass required for sustained fusion. The tidal forces generated by these massive objects create their own form of cosmic horror. Any smaller planets orbiting nearby would be subjected to gravitational stresses so intense they would be torn apart like putty in the hands of an angry giant. The debris from these shredded worlds would form rings of pulverized rock and metal, creating accretion disks that spiral inward toward the brown dwarf surface, adding their mass to the already enormous object in a process that could continue for millions of years. Moving into our 15th category, we encounter worlds that exist in states of temporal instability. These are planets caught in gravitational resonances so complex they create orbital patterns that defy simple description. Their years don't follow predictable cycles, but instead trace chaotic paths through space, sometimes racing close to their stars for brief periods of scorching heat, then swinging out into the frozen darkness for extended intervals of cosmic winter. Imagine living on a world where seasons don't follow any recognizable pattern, where summer might last for decades, followed by centuries of winter, where the very concept of annual cycles becomes meaningless. The temperature swings on these chaotic worlds create climate patterns so extreme they make Earth's ice ages seem like minor fluctuations. Entire hemispheres freeze solid during the long winters, their atmospheres condensing into snow that falls for years without stopping, only to sublimate back into gas when the planet's erratic orbit finally brings it close enough to its star for another brief summer. The psychological impact on any potential inhabitants of such worlds would be devastating. How do you plan for the future when you can't predict whether tomorrow will bring tropical heat or Arctic cold? How do you build a civilization when the very seasons operate according to mathematical chaos theory rather than predictable astronomical cycles? The uncertainty itself would become a form of torture, a constant reminder that the universe operates according to rules too complex and chaotic for finite minds to comprehend. The atmospheric dynamics on these chaotic orbit worlds create weather patterns that exist in a constant state of adjustment and readjustment. As the planet swings between temperature extremes, massive air masses rise and fall in atmospheric convection patterns that can reshape entire weather systems within days. Storm fronts the size of continents form and dissipate as the atmosphere struggles to adapt to rapidly changing solar input, creating meteorological chaos that makes weather prediction not just difficult but theoretically impossible. The 16th category introduces us to worlds where matter itself exists in states that challenge our understanding of atomic structure. These are planets where exotic matter has accumulated through cosmic accidents or stellar processes, creating environments where the normal rules of chemistry and physics break down entirely. Picture worlds where strange quarks have contaminated normal matter, gradually converting ordinary atoms into forms of matter so alien that they exist according to physical laws we can barely comprehend. The transformation process on these strange matter worlds would be invisible at first, detectable only through subtle changes in the way light interacts with matter or the way electromagnetic fields propagate through space. But as the contamination spreads, the changes would become more dramatic. Rocks would begin to glow with their own internal light as their atomic structure shifted into exotic configurations. Metals would become magnetic in ways that defy our understanding of electromagnetic theory. The very ground would become alien, composed of matter that follows physical laws slightly different from those that govern the rest of the universe. The biological implications of such exotic matter contamination would be beyond horrifying. Any life forms that had evolved on these worlds would find their cellular chemistry gradually breaking down as the fundamental particles that make up their atoms transformed into strange matter variants. DNA would become unstable as the chemical bonds that hold it together operated according to altered physical constants. Proteins would denature, not through heat or chemical action, but through the gradual transformation of the very atoms that compose them. The electromagnetic signatures of these strange matter worlds would be unlike anything else in the universe. Their radio emissions would contain frequency components that don't exist in normal space, creating signals that our radio telescopes would register as impossible according to known physics. The light they emit would be polarized in ways that suggest the photons themselves are interacting with matter according to physical laws that operate slightly differently than those we observe in our local region of space. Perhaps most disturbing is the possibility that such exotic matter contamination could spread beyond the confines of individual planets. If strange quarks or other exotic particles can catalyze the transformation of normal matter, then these worlds could become sources of cosmic infection that gradually alter the physical properties of entire solar systems. The contamination could spread through space like a slow-motion plague, transforming normal matter into exotic variants that operate according to alien physical laws. The 17th category of cosmic horror takes us to worlds that exist in states of perpetual atmospheric collapse and reformation. These are planets where the atmosphere itself is unstable, constantly condensing out of the sky only to be revaporized by stellar heating or internal geological processes. The cycle creates an environment where the very air breathes like a living thing, expanding and contracting in vast atmospheric tides that make the concept of stable weather patterns meaningless. Picture standing on such a world during an atmospheric collapse event. The sky would literally be falling as gases that normally exist in vapor form suddenly condense and rain down like liquid snow. The atmospheric pressure would drop so rapidly that your ears would pop continuously, and any bodies of water would begin to boil as the reduced pressure lowered their boiling points. The horizon would become visible through air so thin it could no longer scatter light effectively, revealing landscapes normally hidden by atmospheric haze. But the atmospheric collapse is only half the nightmare. When the revaporization begins, perhaps triggered by increased stellar heating or massive volcanic eruptions, the process reverses with equal violence. Solid and liquid atmospheric components suddenly flash into vapor, creating pressure waves that propagate across the planet's surface at supersonic speeds. The atmospheric expansion would be so rapid and violent that it would create windstorms beyond anything we see on Earth, with velocities approaching significant fractions of the speed of sound. The chemical composition of these collapsing atmospheres adds another layer of horror to the process. As different atmospheric components condense at different temperatures and pressures, the collapsing atmosphere separates into layers of distinct chemical composition. Clouds of sulfuric acid might rain down while layers of methane snow accumulate on the surface, creating a multi-component chemical disaster that transforms the planetary surface into a toxic wasteland during each collapse cycle. The acoustic environment during these atmospheric events would be beyond human comprehension. As trillions of tons of gas suddenly change phase from vapor to liquid to solid and back again, the sound waves generated would be powerful enough to shatter rock formations and create seismic waves that propagate through the planet's crust. The very act of atmospheric breathing would generate acoustic signatures that could be detected from space, turning these worlds into cosmic percussion instruments that broadcast their atmospheric death throes across interstellar distances. Moving deeper into our catalogue of nightmares, the 18th category reveals worlds where crystalline structures have grown to planetary scales. These aren't just planets with crystal formations on their surfaces, but worlds where the entire planetary mass has organized itself into single massive crystal lattices that span continents or even entire hemispheres. The geological processes that create such structures operate under conditions so extreme they exist nowhere else in the known universe. The optical properties of these crystal worlds would create visual effects that defy description. Light entering the crystalline structure would be refracted and reflected through internal crystal faces, creating optical illusions where the landscape appears to extend infinitely in all directions. The horizon would become meaningless as light rays bounce through the crystal matrix, creating phantom images of distant landscapes and impossible geometries that would drive any observer to madness simply through visual overload. The acoustic properties of planetary scale crystals would be equally disturbing. Sound waves propagating through crystalline structures of such enormous size would create resonance effects that could amplify whispers into thunderclaps or focus acoustic energy into beams capable of shattering other crystal formations from vast distances. The entire planet would become a single musical instrument of cosmic proportions, capable of generating acoustic frequencies that span the entire range of possible sound. The mechanical properties of these crystal worlds create their own unique form of environmental hazard. Unlike the flexible crustal plates we see on Earth, planetary scale crystals would be rigid and brittle. When subjected to thermal expansion or gravitational stresses, they wouldn't bend or deform gradually. Instead, they would fail catastrophically, creating planetary scale fractures that propagate across continents in minutes, opening chasms that could swallow entire mountain ranges and creating crystal avalanches that reshape the planetary surface with each thermal cycle. The 19th category introduces us to worlds that exist in states of quantum uncertainty on macroscopic scales. These are planets where quantum mechanical effects, normally confined to atomic and subatomic particles, somehow extend to influence matter at planetary scales. The very ground beneath your feet would exist in superposition states, simultaneously solid and liquid, present and absent, until observed or measured. The implications of macroscopic quantum effects on planetary environments would be beyond our ability to comprehend. Landforms would exist in multiple states simultaneously until some cosmic observation collapsed their wave functions into definite configurations. Mountains might be simultaneously present and absent, existing as probability clouds, until some interaction with electromagnetic radiation or gravitational waves forced them to assume specific positions and compositions. The navigation challenges on such quantum worlds would make exploration impossible by any conventional means. Maps would be meaningless when terrain features exist only as probability distributions rather than fixed geographical landmarks. The very act of observation would alter the landscape being observed, creating a cosmic uncertainty principle where the more precisely you tried to determine your location, the more dramatically the surrounding environment would shift to accommodate the quantum measurement. The biological implications of macroscopic quantum effects would challenge our understanding of life itself. How could living organisms maintain cellular integrity when their component atoms exist in superposition states? How could consciousness arise in a brain where neural connections exist only as probability clouds until observed? The very concept of stable biological processes would become meaningless in an environment where quantum uncertainty affects matter at cellular and molecular scales. Perhaps most disturbing is the realization that such quantum worlds might represent a glimpse into the true nature of reality at scales we don't normally observe. If quantum mechanical effects can somehow extend to macroscopic environments, then our perception of the universe as a collection of definite objects with fixed properties might be nothing more than a convenient illusion created by the limitation of our observational capabilities. The 20th category of cosmic nightmares takes us to worlds that exist at the boundaries of space-time itself. These are planets orbiting so close to black holes or other extreme gravitational sources that they experience space-time curvature effects strong enough to distort the very geometry of their existence. The surface of such worlds wouldn't follow normal geometric rules, creating landscapes where parallel lines converge, where triangles contain more or less than 180 degrees, where the shortest distance between 2 points isn't a straight line. The gravitational tidal forces on these space-time distorted worlds would create geological features that exist nowhere else in the universe. Mountain ranges that curve back on themselves through higher dimensional space, valleys that extend infinitely inward through folded space-time, rivers that flow uphill through gravitational anomalies that make elevation a relative rather than absolute concept. The very topology of these worlds would be alien, following mathematical relationships that human minds evolved on flat space-time cannot easily comprehend. The temporal effects on these curved space-time worlds would add another dimension of horror to their already impossible conditions. Different regions of the planet would experience time at different rates, creating temporal gradients where cause and effect relationships break down. Events in high-gravity regions would appear to happen in slow motion when observed from lower gravity areas, while observers in the high-gravity regions would see the rest of the universe speeding up around them in a cosmic time-lapse effect. The electromagnetic effects of extreme space-time curvature would create optical phenomena that challenge our understanding of light and radiation. Photons following geodesics through the curved space-time around these worlds would create gravitational lensing effects that make navigation by visual reference impossible. Light from distant stars would be focused and defocused by the gravitational field, creating multiple images of the same celestial objects and phantom constellations that exist only as gravitational mirages. The 21st category reveals worlds where the very concept of discrete matter breaks down entirely. These are planets that exist as standing wave patterns in quantum fields, worlds that maintain their apparent solidity not through conventional atomic structure, but through stable resonance patterns in the underlying quantum vacuum. The matter that appears to compose these worlds would be nothing more than organized energy, held in planetary form by quantum field equations that operate according to principles we're only beginning to understand. The phase transition effects on these quantum field worlds would create environmental changes unlike anything in our experience. When the quantum field configurations shift, entire continents could vanish and reappear as the standing wave patterns reorganize themselves into new stable configurations. The planetary mass would remain constant, but its distribution and organization could change dramatically as quantum field resonances establish new equilibrium patterns. The interaction between consciousness and quantum field planets raises philosophical questions that challenge our understanding of the relationship between mind and matter. If the planetary environment exists as organized quantum information rather than conventional matter, then conscious observation might directly influence the planet's physical structure through quantum measurement effects. The very act of thinking about the landscape might alter its configuration, creating a world that responds to mental activity in ways that make the boundary between subjective experience and objective reality meaningless. The electromagnetic signatures of quantum field worlds would be unlike anything else in the universe. Their radio emissions would contain quantum coherence patterns that suggest the entire planet exists as a single quantum mechanical system. The electromagnetic radiation they emit would be entangled across vast frequency ranges, creating correlations that violate classical physics and suggest these worlds operate according to quantum mechanical principles scaled up to planetary dimensions. As we approach the culmination of our journey through these cosmic nightmares, we encounter the 22nd category, worlds that exist in states of perpetual dimensional instability. These are planets where the familiar three dimensions of space occasionally fluctuate, revealing glimpses of higher dimensional geometries that human minds cannot process. The landscape would periodically fold through dimensions we cannot perceive, creating impossible architectures where interior spaces are larger than their exterior containers and where travelers can walk in straight lines that somehow curve back on themselves through higher dimensional shortcuts. The visual effects of dimensional instability would be beyond human comprehension. Objects would appear to have more sides than geometrically possible, casting shadows that extend in directions that don't correspond to any known spatial orientation. The horizon would curve through dimensions that don't exist in normal space, creating optical illusions where distant objects appear simultaneously near and far, large and small, present and absent, depending on which dimensional cross-section happened to be visible at any given moment. The navigational challenges on dimensionally unstable worlds would make exploration impossible by conventional means. Maps drawn on two-dimensional surfaces couldn't represent landscapes that extend through higher dimensions. Compass readings would be meaningless when magnetic field lines curve through spatial dimensions that instruments cannot detect. Even the concept of distance would become relative, as the shortest path between 2 points might involve traveling through dimensional folds that reduce vast distances to simple steps. The psychological impact of experiencing dimensional instability would be catastrophic for any consciousness evolved in three-dimensional space. The human brain, developed to process spatial relationships in exactly 3 dimensions, would be overwhelmed by sensory input that includes geometric relationships extending through higher dimensional space. The resulting perceptual chaos would likely lead to immediate and permanent madness as the mind struggled to process spatial information that violates every assumption about the nature of physical reality. These dimensionally unstable worlds represent the ultimate boundary of cosmic horror, places where not just the environment is hostile, but where the very geometry of existence becomes alien and incomprehensible. They remind us that our three-dimensional universe might be nothing more than a small subset of a far more complex, multi-dimensional reality, and that there might be worlds out there that exist according to spatial relationships so foreign to our experience that they challenge the very foundations of what we consider possible. The 23rd, and perhaps most disturbing category of all, takes us to worlds that exist in states of causal loop instability. These are planets, where the normal progression of cause and effect becomes tangled into self-referential knots that create temporal paradoxes on geological scales. Events on these worlds don't follow linear causality, but instead form closed loops where effects precede their causes, where the future influences the past, where the very concept of sequential time breaks down entirely. Picture a world where earthquakes are caused by the geological damage they create, where volcanic eruptions are triggered by the ash deposits they produce, where the formation of mountain ranges is caused by the erosion patterns that will eventually wear them away. The landscape exists in a state of temporal paradox where every geological feature both creates and is created by the processes that shape it, forming causal loops that violate every principle of linear causality. The atmospheric dynamics on these temporally paradoxical worlds would create weather patterns that exist outside normal time, storm systems that are simultaneously their own cause and effect, rain that falls upward into clouds that haven't formed yet, wind patterns that blow from areas of low pressure toward the high pressure systems that create them. The very concept of meteorological prediction becomes meaningless when weather patterns exist in states of temporal self-reference. The implications for consciousness on such worlds would be beyond human comprehension. How could awareness exist in an environment where thoughts could influence their own causes, where memories of future events shape past experiences, where the very flow of mental processes becomes tangled in temporal knots that make sequential thinking impossible? The boundary between past and future, between cause and effect, between self and environment, would dissolve into a unified temporal chaos that challenges every assumption about the nature of consciousness and identity. These causal loop worlds represent the ultimate cosmic nightmare, places where not just matter and energy behave according to alien rules, but where time itself becomes hostile to any form of consciousness that depends on sequential causality to maintain coherent identity. They remind us that our universe's apparent commitment to linear causality might be nothing more than a local peculiarity, and that there might be regions of space where the very foundations of logical thought and sequential experience break down entirely. As we continue to catalogue these impossible worlds, we begin to understand that the universe operates according to principles far more bizarre and hostile than we ever imagined. Each new category of cosmic nightmare reveals conditions so extreme they challenge our most basic assumptions about what it means for matter, energy, space, and time to exist at all. These worlds don't just represent hostile environments where life as we know it cannot survive. They represent regions of reality where the very concepts we use to understand existence break down entirely, where physics itself becomes alien and incomprehensible. The mathematical models we use to describe these nightmare worlds often return results that seem to violate the fundamental laws of the universe. Calculations that suggest planetary conditions so extreme, they exist at the very boundaries of what reality allows. These are worlds balanced on the knife's edge between existence and dissolution into pure mathematical abstraction, places where the universe experiments with physical laws so exotic they might not be stable enough to persist for more than brief moments of cosmic time. Yet here they are, real worlds orbiting real stars, detected by our telescopes and confirmed by multiple independent observations. Each discovery forces us to expand our understanding of what the universe considers possible, revealing cosmic creativity that surpasses our wildest nightmares. The gentle conditions we enjoy on Earth become more precious with each new exoplanet discovery, more clearly revealed as an almost impossibly rare convergence of factors that allow matter to exist in stable forms and consciousness to contemplate its own existence. The electromagnetic signatures of these nightmare worlds, when translated into audio frequencies, sound like the universe screaming. Their gravitational wave emissions create ripples in space-time that carry the acoustic signature of cosmic suffering across interstellar distances. Their radio emissions broadcast chaos and destruction at frequencies that penetrate the cosmic background radiation, ensuring that the evidence of their existence reaches every corner of the galaxy. But perhaps most disturbing of all is the growing realization that these nightmare worlds aren't rare cosmic accidents. They represent the normal state of planetary existence in our universe, the default condition toward which most worlds naturally evolve. The stable, life-supporting environment we enjoy on Earth is the true anomaly, a statistical impossibility that exists only because of an incredibly precise balance of factors that could be disrupted at any moment by cosmic events beyond our control. As we drift deeper into this catalogue of cosmic horror, we must confront the unsettling truth that we are surrounded by a universe filled with worlds that would destroy us instantly, environments so hostile they make the vacuum of space seem welcoming by comparison. Yet tonight, you rest safely on one of the universe's rarest treasures, sheltered from the cosmic chaos that defines most of reality, breathing air that doesn't dissolve your lungs, standing on ground that doesn't shift through higher dimensions, experiencing time that flows in predictable sequential order from past to future. The universe may be filled with nightmare worlds beyond imagination, but for this brief moment in cosmic history, consciousness has found a foothold on a gentle world where it can contemplate the vast hostile cosmos from a position of relative safety. We are the universe becoming aware of its own capacity for creating conditions so extreme they challenge the very possibility of awareness itself. Each new discovery of these nightmare worlds forces us to confront a disturbing mathematical reality about our cosmic neighborhood. For every potentially habitable world we might hope to find, statistical models suggest there are thousands upon thousands of these hellish planets, worlds that exist in states of perpetual catastrophe that would annihilate any known form of life within nanoseconds of exposure. The 24th category of cosmic horror introduces us to worlds where matter phases in and out of existence on geological timescales. These are planets caught in quantum vacuum fluctuations, so massive they affect macroscopic matter, creating environments where entire continents spontaneously appear and disappear as quantum field equations resolve into different probability states. Imagine standing on solid ground that suddenly ceases to exist as the quantum vacuum beneath it shifts into a different energy configuration, only to rematerialize moments later in a completely different geological arrangement. The temporal aspects of these quantum fluctuation worlds create their own unique form of environmental nightmare. The quantum uncertainty principle, normally confined to subatomic scales, somehow extends to influence matter at planetary levels. Mountain ranges exist in probability clouds, simultaneously present and absent, until some cosmic interaction collapses their wave functions into definite configurations. The very concept of permanent geographical features becomes meaningless when terrain exists only as mathematical possibilities until observed. The biological implications of macroscopic quantum fluctuations would challenge every assumption we make about the stability of matter. How could complex molecular structures maintain their integrity when the atoms that compose them exist in superposition states spanning multiple possible configurations? How could cellular processes function when the very proteins and enzymes they depend on exist only as probability distributions rather than definite chemical structures? Picture the psychological horror of existing on such a world. If consciousness could somehow survive the quantum uncertainty that affects matter at cellular scales, your own body would exist in multiple states simultaneously, your memories scattered across probability clouds of different brain configurations. The boundary between self and environment would dissolve as quantum effects make the very concept of discrete identity meaningless. Moving into the 25th category, we encounter worlds that exist in states of elemental transmutation. These are planets where the fundamental elements themselves are unstable, constantly transforming from one atomic configuration to another through processes that operate far beyond the normal rates of radioactive decay. The very ground beneath your feet would be alchemical chaos, with lead transmuting into gold, carbon transforming into silicon, hydrogen fusing into helium, in reactions that occur at temperatures far below what should be physically possible. The chemical processes on these elemental transmutation worlds would create atmospheric conditions unlike anything in our experience. As elements spontaneously transform, they release or absorb energy in ways that create temperature fluctuations spanning thousands of degrees within minutes. The atmospheric composition would be in constant flux as gases transmute into different elements with different chemical properties, creating air that might be breathable one moment and lethally toxic the next. The geological implications of widespread elemental transmutation would create landscapes that exist in permanent states of reconstruction. Rock formations would constantly change their mineral composition as their constituent elements transformed into different atomic configurations. Diamond could become graphite, could become silicon dioxide, in transformation cascades that reshape entire mountain ranges as the atomic structure of matter flows like liquid through different elemental states. The electromagnetic signatures of these transmutation worlds would broadcast across the galaxy like cosmic lighthouses, their radio emissions containing spectral lines that shift and change as elements transform in real time. The energy released by constant atomic transmutation would create radiation environments so intense they would sterilize entire solar systems, turning these worlds into beacons of atomic chaos that announce their presence across interstellar distances. The 26th category reveals worlds where entropy itself operates according to alien principles. These are planets where the second law of thermodynamics runs in reverse, where heat flows from cold to hot, where disorder spontaneously organizes itself into complex structures, where broken things repair themselves, and scattered matter assembles into organized patterns without external energy input. The very foundation of physical causality operates backwards on these worlds, creating environments where effect precedes cause and complexity emerges from chaos. Imagine standing on such a world and watching shattered rocks spontaneously reassemble themselves. witnessing rivers flow uphill as they organize thermal energy into kinetic motion, observing atmospheric gases separate themselves into distinct layers as entropy decreases rather than increases. The psychological impact of witnessing the fundamental laws of physics operating in reverse would be devastating for any consciousness evolved in a universe where entropy provides the arrow of time. The atmospheric dynamics on these reverse entropy worlds would create weather patterns that violate every principle of meteorological science. Cold air would spontaneously heat itself and rise, creating convection currents that flow against gravitational gradients. Storm systems would organize themselves from random atmospheric motion, growing more complex and structured over time, rather than dissipating into chaos. Rain would fall upward as water molecules organize themselves into increasingly unlikely configurations. The temporal implications of reversed entropy create their own form of cosmic horror. If entropy provides the arrow of time that distinguishes past from future, then worlds where entropy decreases rather than increases would experience time flowing in the opposite direction from the rest of the universe. Events would unfold backwards, with effects preceding their causes, memories forming before the experiences they record, death preceding birth in temporal sequences that challenge every assumption about the nature of causality. The 27th category introduces us to worlds that exist in states of dimensional bleeding, where the boundaries between different spatial dimensions become permeable. These are planets where three-dimensional space occasionally tears, revealing glimpses of four-dimensional or five-dimensional geometries that human minds cannot process. Objects would appear to have more surfaces than geometrically possible, casting shadows that extend in directions that don't correspond to any known spatial orientation. The navigation challenges on these dimensionally bleeding worlds would make exploration impossible by any conventional means. Maps drawn on flat surfaces couldn't represent landscapes that extend through higher dimensions. Travelers could walk in straight lines that somehow curve back on themselves through four-dimensional shortcuts, arriving at their starting point from directions that don't exist in normal three-dimensional space. The visual effects of dimensional bleeding would be beyond human comprehension. The horizon would curve through dimensions we cannot perceive, creating optical illusions where distant objects appear simultaneously near and far, large and small, present and absent, depending on which dimensional cross-section happened to be visible at any given moment. The very concept of distance would become relative, as the shortest path between 2 points might involve traveling through dimensional folds that exist outside normal space. The psychological impact of experiencing dimensional instability would be catastrophic for any consciousness evolved in three-dimensional space. The human brain, developed to process spatial relationships in exactly 3 dimensions, would be overwhelmed by sensory input that includes geometric relationships extending through higher dimensional space. The resulting perceptual chaos would likely lead to immediate and permanent madness as the mind struggled to process spatial information that violates every assumption about the nature of physical reality. Moving deeper into our catalogue of nightmares, the 28th category reveals worlds where consciousness itself becomes a physical force. These are planets where the act of observation doesn't just reveal reality, but actively shapes it, where conscious awareness exerts measurable effects on matter and energy at macroscopic scales. The landscape would respond to mental activity, reshaping itself according to the thoughts and perceptions of any conscious observers present. The implications of consciousness as a physical force would challenge every assumption we make about the relationship between mind and matter. Thoughts wouldn't just be patterns of neural activity, but actual forces capable of moving mountains, changing weather patterns, and altering the fundamental properties of matter through the sheer act of conscious attention. The boundary between subjective experience and objective reality would dissolve entirely as mental processes directly influence physical events. The environmental dynamics on these consciousness-responsive worlds would create conditions unlike anything in our experience. The terrain would exist in a constant state of flux, reshaping itself according to the mental states of any observers present. Peaceful thoughts might create tranquil landscapes, while fearful or aggressive mental states could trigger earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and violent weather patterns that reflect the emotional content of conscious awareness. The social implications of consciousness as a physical force would create their own form of cosmic horror. How could multiple conscious beings coexist on a world that responds to mental activity when their thoughts and perceptions inevitably conflict? The landscape would become a battleground of competing consciousnesses, each struggling to impose their mental reality on the physical environment, creating chaotic conditions that shift moment by moment as different minds assert their influence over the planetary surface. The 29th category takes us to worlds that exist in states of temporal recursion, where time itself forms closed loops that trap events in endless cycles of repetition. These are planets where the same geological processes repeat endlessly, where the same weather patterns recur in identical sequences, where the same cosmic events play out again and again in perfect temporal loops that span millions of years. The psychological horror of existing on such a world would be beyond human comprehension. Imagine being trapped in a temporal loop where your entire civilization rises and falls in exactly the same way, where every choice leads to identical outcomes, where free will becomes an illusion as you discover that every action you take has been taken countless times before in previous iterations of the same temporal cycle. The geological implications of temporal recursion would create landscapes that exist in states of perfect cyclical repetition. The same mountains would rise and fall in identical patterns. The same rivers would carve identical channels. The same volcanic eruptions would occur at precisely the same moments in each temporal cycle. The planet would become a cosmic recording, playing the same geological symphony over and over again for eternity. The atmospheric dynamics on these time-looped worlds would create weather patterns that repeat with mathematical precision. The same storms would form at identical moments, following identical paths, producing identical amounts of rainfall in cycles that span geological ages. Meteorological prediction would become trivially simple once the temporal loop was understood, but the knowledge would bring no comfort to any conscious beings trapped within the endless repetition. Finally, we arrive at the 30th and perhaps most disturbing category of all: worlds that exist as conscious entities themselves. These are planets where the boundary between living organism and geological formation has dissolved entirely, where the planet itself has achieved some form of awareness that operates on timescales spanning millions of years. The landscape would be alive in ways we cannot comprehend, with geological processes serving as neural networks that span continents, volcanic eruptions functioning as synaptic discharges in a planetary brain. The implications of planetary consciousness would challenge every assumption we make about the nature of life and awareness. How could we distinguish between geological processes and biological functions when the entire planet operates as a single living organism? How could we understand the thoughts and motivations of an entity whose mental processes operate on scales of space and time that dwarf human experience? The environmental dynamics on conscious planets would reflect the mental states of entities whose consciousness spans entire worlds. The planet's mood could be reflected in its weather patterns, its emotions expressed through seismic activity, its thoughts manifested as changes in magnetic field strength or atmospheric composition. The very ground beneath your feet would be part of a vast neural network processing information at scales beyond human comprehension. The ethical implications of discovering conscious planets would force us to reconsider our entire understanding of what constitutes life and intelligence. How could we explore such worlds without causing harm to entities whose body is the planet itself? How could we communicate with consciousnesses that think in geological time and experience reality on scales that make individual human lives seem like brief fluctuations in their eternal mental processes? These conscious worlds would represent the ultimate form of cosmic horror, not because they are hostile to life, but because they force us to confront the possibility that consciousness and intelligence might exist in forms so alien to our experience that we cannot even recognize them as living beings. They remind us that the universe might be filled with forms of awareness that operate according to principles so foreign to human consciousness that contact with them would shatter every assumption we make about the nature of mind, life, and identity. As we near the completion of our journey through these cosmic nightmares, we must confront the overwhelming statistical reality that these hellish worlds represent. Current astronomical surveys suggest that for every potentially habitable planet in our galaxy, there might be hundreds or thousands of worlds that exist in states of perpetual catastrophe. The universe appears to have a profound preference for creating conditions so extreme they challenge the very possibility of life, consciousness, or stable matter existing anywhere within their influence. The mathematical models we use to understand planetary formation consistently produce results that favor the creation of nightmare worlds over gentle, life-supporting environments like Earth. The precise balance of factors required to create stable conditions suitable for complex chemistry and biological processes represents such an unlikely convergence of circumstances that its existence borders on the miraculous. Each new exoplanet discovery seems to push the boundaries of what we thought possible, revealing conditions more extreme than our previous most pessimistic projections. We are mapping a galaxy filled with worlds that exist in states of reality so foreign to our experience, they challenge our ability to comprehend what the universe considers normal planetary conditions. The electromagnetic signatures of these nightmare worlds create a cosmic cacophony of destruction that broadcasts across the galaxy at the speed of light. Their radio emissions, gravitational wave signatures, and exotic particle emissions combine to create a symphony of cosmic horror that announces the existence of conditions so extreme they would instantly annihilate any form of matter or energy we recognize as stable. Yet here we are, conscious beings evolved on one of the universe's rarest treasures, a world so perfectly calibrated for the existence of complex matter and biological processes that it represents a statistical anomaly of almost incomprehensible magnitude. Every breath you take, every heartbeat, every thought that passes through your mind represents a victory against cosmic odds, so overwhelming they suggest that consciousness itself might be the universe's most unlikely and precious achievement. The gentle gravity that holds you safely to Earth's surface, the atmosphere that provides each breath without dissolving your lungs, the magnetic field that shields you from radiation lethal enough to sterilize entire solar systems, all represent a convergence of conditions so improbable. Their simultaneous existence challenges our understanding of cosmic probability and natural selection. Tonight, as you rest on this miraculous island of habitability in an ocean of cosmic chaos, remember that you are witnessing the universe contemplating its own capacity for creating conditions so extreme they transcend the boundaries of imagination. We are temporary arrangements of matter and energy that have achieved the extraordinary feat of consciousness, allowing the cosmos to observe and understand its own infinite capacity for both creation and destruction. The nightmare worlds we've explored together aren't just distant curiosities or abstract mathematical possibilities. They are real places, orbiting real stars, existing right now as we speak in states of perpetual catastrophe that make the harshest environments on Earth seem like tropical paradises. They remind us that the universe operates according to principles far more extreme and alien than anything we encounter in our daily experience, and that our gentle world represents a precious sanctuary in a cosmos designed to destroy rather than nurture the delicate processes that make life and consciousness possible. As we draw our cosmic journey to a close, drifting through the final chapters of this catalogue of universal horrors, we arrive at a realization both humbling and profound. The nightmare worlds we've explored together aren't merely distant curiosities scattered across the galaxy like cosmic footnotes to a more benevolent universe. They are the rule, not the exception. They represent the universe's true nature, its default setting, the standard operating conditions that govern most of reality. Think about this for a moment. While you've been listening to these words, resting comfortably wherever you are, there are worlds where metallic hydrogen rains upward through electromagnetic storms, where matter phases in and out of existence on geological timescales, where time itself flows backwards and consciousness becomes a force capable of reshaping entire landscapes. These aren't theoretical possibilities or mathematical abstractions. They're happening right now, this very second, in real places orbiting real stars throughout our galaxy. The statistical models paint a picture so stark it's almost impossible to accept. For every world that might support conditions even remotely similar to Earth, current estimates suggest there could be tens of thousands of planets existing in states of perpetual catastrophe. Worlds where the very atoms are torn apart by radiation, where gravity compresses matter beyond recognition, where temperatures fluctuate between extremes that would vaporize steel and freeze time itself. What makes this even more unsettling is the realization that these nightmare conditions aren't temporary states or cosmic accidents. They represent stable equilibrium points in the universe's grand equation. These hellish worlds have existed in their current states for millions or billions of years, and they'll continue existing long after our sun burns out and Earth itself becomes a frozen relic drifting through space. The electromagnetic signatures reaching us from across the galaxy tell the story of cosmic violence on scales that dwarf human imagination. Radio telescopes detect signals from worlds where entire atmospheres scream in frequencies that translate to the sounds of planetary agony. Gravitational wave detectors register ripples in space-time itself, created by worlds so massive and unstable they distort the very fabric of reality around them. Yet here's what makes our situation even more extraordinary. Not only do we exist on one of the universe's rarest treasures, but we've developed the capacity to understand and catalogue the cosmic horror that surrounds us. We are consciousness arising from matter, temporary arrangements of stardust that have learned to contemplate the infinite hostility of the cosmos from our small sanctuary of habitability. Every measurement we take, every observation we make, every calculation we perform reveals the same unsettling truth. The conditions that allow complex chemistry, stable matter, and conscious thought represent a convergence of factors so unlikely that their simultaneous existence challenges our understanding of probability itself. The delicate balance of forces that keeps our atmosphere from boiling away, our oceans from freezing solid, our magnetic field from collapsing, exists within such narrow parameters that a shift of mere percentages in any direction would transform Earth into another nightmare world. Consider the cosmic forces that could, at any moment, disrupt this precious equilibrium. A nearby gamma-ray burst could strip away our atmosphere in seconds. A passing rogue planet could alter our orbit enough to freeze or fry our world. Our sun could experience a stellar flare powerful enough to sterilize the surface. The magnetic field that shields us from lethal radiation could weaken and collapse, leaving us exposed to cosmic forces that would make the surface of Earth uninhabitable within decades. But tonight, in this moment, all of these catastrophic possibilities remain just possibilities. You rest safely on a world where matter exists in stable forms, where chemical bonds hold molecules together long enough for complex processes like thought and consciousness to emerge. The very neurons firing in your brain as you listen to these words represent a triumph of organization over entropy, of complexity over chaos, of life over the universe's apparent preference for destruction. The journey we've taken together through these cosmic nightmares serves a purpose beyond mere scientific curiosity or cosmic horror entertainment. It reveals the true magnitude of what we have here on Earth, the almost impossible rarity of conditions that allow not just life, but consciousness, but the capacity to wonder about our place in the vast scheme of existence. When you wake tomorrow morning and step outside, remember that the gentle breeze on your face carries air that doesn't dissolve your lungs. The ground beneath your feet remains solid and stable, not shifting through higher dimensions or transmuting its elemental composition. The sun overhead provides warmth and light without subjecting you to radiation doses that would sterilize continents. These aren't small miracles, they're cosmic impossibilities that somehow became possible on our tiny world. The universe has shown us its true face through these nightmare worlds, revealed its capacity for creating conditions so extreme they transcend our ability to imagine them. Yet it has also shown us something else. In a cosmos designed for destruction, consciousness has found a foothold. In a galaxy filled with worlds that would annihilate any complex structure within nanoseconds, minds have evolved capable of contemplating the very horror that surrounds them. We are the universe's way of understanding itself, temporary patterns in the cosmic dance that have achieved the remarkable feat of self-awareness. We can study worlds where diamond rain falls through skies of molten rock, where gravity tears planets apart atom by atom, where time itself becomes the enemy of causality, all while resting safely in conditions so gentle they would seem impossibly benevolent to any hypothetical consciousness that might exist on those nightmare worlds. Perhaps most remarkably of all, we've developed the capacity not just to observe and catalogue these cosmic horrors, but to feel awe and wonder at their existence. We can appreciate the strange beauty in worlds where aurora displays visible from interstellar distances mark the death throes of entire atmospheres. We can find fascination in planets where the very laws of physics operate according to principles that challenge our most fundamental assumptions about reality. This capacity for wonder in the face of cosmic horror might be the most extraordinary development in the universe's 13.8 billion year history. That matter could organize itself into forms capable of contemplating conditions so extreme they exist at the boundaries of what reality allows represents an achievement so unlikely it borders on the impossible. As our exploration draws to a close, I want you to carry with you not fear of the cosmic nightmares we've discovered, but a deeper appreciation for the miracle of your existence here and now. You are made of atoms forged in the hearts of dying stars, arranged in patterns complex enough to contemplate their own cosmic origins. You breathe air that has circulated through the lungs of countless generations. Drink water that has flowed through ancient oceans. Stand on ground that has witnessed the entire history of life on Earth. The atoms in your body have journeyed through space for billions of years before finding their temporary home in your consciousness. The carbon in your cells once danced in the nuclear furnaces of ancient suns. The oxygen you breathe was expelled in the final death throes of massive stars that exploded long before our solar system even existed. You are not separate from the cosmic story we've explored tonight. You are part of it, a living chapter in the universe's ongoing attempt to understand itself. Tonight, as you drift towards sleep, let your mind wander back through the worlds we've visited together. The tidally locked planets where one side burns in eternal fire while the other freezes in permanent darkness. The diamond worlds where crystalline mountains crack and shift under pressures that compress matter beyond recognition. The rogue planets drifting alone through the cosmic void, their surfaces frozen to temperatures approaching absolute zero. Each of these nightmare worlds exists right now, orbiting distant stars, following the same physical laws that govern our gentle Earth. But here's what I find most beautiful about our cosmic situation. Despite being surrounded by this galaxy of horrors, despite existing in a universe that seems designed to destroy rather than create, consciousness has not only emerged but flourished. We've built telescopes that can peer across billions of light years to catalogue these distant nightmares. We've developed mathematics sophisticated enough to model conditions so extreme they push against the fundamental limits of what physics allows. We've created art, music, and literature that captures the wonder and terror of our cosmic predicament. The next time you look up at the night sky, remember that each point of light might harbour worlds beyond our most fevered imaginings. Stars that nurture planets where the very ground shifts through dimensions we cannot perceive. Solar systems where matter exists in states so exotic they operate according to physical laws slightly different from our own. Worlds where consciousness itself has become a geological force, reshaping entire landscapes through the power of thought alone. Yet that same sky has also given us the gift of perspective. It has shown us how precious and improbable our existence truly is. Every sunset you witness, every breath you take, every moment of peace and stability you experience represents a victory against cosmic odds so overwhelming they approach the miraculous. You are living proof that the universe, despite its preference for extremes, occasionally creates conditions gentle enough for wonder to emerge. As you close your eyes tonight, know that you carry within yourself the story of the cosmos. The elements that make up your being have travelled across space and time, surviving stellar explosions, gravitational chaos, and countless cosmic catastrophes to arrive here, now, in this moment of quiet contemplation. You are stardust that learned to think, matter that became conscious of its own existence, a temporary arrangement of atoms that can contemplate infinity. The universe may be vast and largely hostile, filled with worlds that would destroy us in an instant, but tonight you rest safely on our small blue sanctuary. The same gravitational forces that tear apart those distant nightmare worlds hold you gently to Earth's surface. The same electromagnetic forces that create plasma storms on other planets power the gentle electrical impulses in your brain that make thought possible. You are home in the cosmos, however briefly, however improbably. Sweet dreams, fellow cosmic wanderer. Rest well on this miraculous island of habitability in an ocean of infinite mystery. Tomorrow, the universe will still be vast and strange, and filled with wonders beyond imagination. But tonight, you are exactly where you belong, part of the greatest story ever told. A conscious witness to the universe's capacity for both creation and destruction. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the most horrifying planets ever discovered. Until we meet again among the stars, keep wondering, keep questioning, and never forget how extraordinary it is that we exist at all in this beautiful, terrible, endlessly surprising cosmos we call home. I wish you a very good night. This is Boring Science signing off. Cheers.